Hey, what's up guys? This is Coach Tevin with Speed Academy Track Club, and today we're gonna break down the 400-meter run, the race that make you wanna smack your mama. Boom, bop, bada bop, boom, pow. Woo, woo. Also want to thank everyone that participated in the poll to vote the 400-meter versus the 200. Last time I checked, we had 50 votes for the 400 and 25 for the 200. So 400 it is. So let's get into it. Before we actually get down into the race strategy, I just want to talk to you guys real quick about the most important part of this race, which doesn't even happen on the track. It starts with their mindset. So for the 400 meters, it's a race that combines one, a great base of endurance, and two, being able to have a lot of speed to back up that endurance, right? But at the end of the day, the only way you're gonna run a great 400 is if you're able to push through pain. Now, I always like to say the athlete that's able to embrace pain the most is the one that's gonna be able to have the best result in the 400 meter. Now that we covered a bit of mindset, now I want to talk about the fear that's based around the 400 meters. And this is something that I've personally struggled with in my years of high school. Anytime there's a chance to run the 400, whether it's at a practice or at a track meet, I would literally start to get nervous or even start to think that I have a phobia of the 400. And I think what that really means is just you haven't done the job to condition yourself to run the race correctly. For a lot of athletes that I've worked with, I've noticed that the athletes that take the time to condition themselves for the 400, it's a lot easier for them to go into the race without that fear versus someone like me that loved to do the 100 meters and the 150s, and anything longer than that, I took it for granted. So the thing about the 400 is, if you want to be great at this race, you must condition. Before we can get into the race strategy, there's the background work that needs to be done for you to be able to execute what I'm about to share with you guys. So note, if you're at the beginning of your season, go ahead and take initiative to do a great job of conditioning yourself for the 400. But if we're on race day and it's time to go, we just got to do the best we can. Another thing about the 400, a lot of athletes struggle with breaking barriers for different age groups. So for example, in high school, a lot of girls struggle with breaking that 1-minute barrier, and a lot of guys struggle with breaking that 50-second barrier. How do we break that barrier? The main thing you want to focus on is increasing your maximal speed. Let's use Amari Turner for example. In the 100 meters, he ran 10.43. In the 200, he runs 20.66. And the 400, he runs a 47.3. Now for him to be able to run a solid 400 meters, he'll need that top end velocity in that 100 meters. So we actually did a research on this a couple months ago. Amari was able to hit 23.5 miles per hour as his top end velocity. Now for an athlete that can go up to 23 miles per hour will always outrun someone that can go about 20 to 21. So in order to run a sub 50-second 400 meter, you're gonna also need that maximal speed that's gonna translate around that lap. All right, so here we're going to break down how you would run the 400 meters in lane 1, lane 4, and lane 8. How I think about this is you wanna use your lanes to your advantage to be able to execute the best race possible. Personally, I like to look at it from a psychological level to where it doesn't matter what lane I'm in, I'm gonna use it to my best advantage. So here we're gonna start with the primary lane, which is gonna be lane 4. Everyone runs to run in the lane 4, but to me, you wanna be able to run in any lane possible. So with lane 4, we're gonna use the blue marker, all right? So we're here in lane 4. The main thing you want to do getting out of the first 50 meters, the goal is to catch lane 5. So you want to get to the 50-meter mark. Let me draw that curve. Running at about 95% of your maximal speed. So you want to get out almost as if you're running at 100%, but you want to go as fast as you can to catch lane 5. Now let's say lane 5 is going as fast as possible as well. Then you want to increase that length to say, well, I'm going to go get them at the 80. All right? So you have up to the 50 meters to catch them. If you can't do that by then the goal is, let's see if we can get them by the 80. Now let's just say lane 5 is just extremely fast. Then we're not going to worry about them too much. We're going to just focus on our own race strategy. So that first 50 to 80 meters, we're going to get out at 95%. And then once we get into that 90 meter mark, we're going to get into more of a tempo run. What that means is we're still turning the legs over fast, but we're not pushing as hard as we were that first 90. So this is like a relaxed recovery part of the race. So here where the dotted lines are, right here we're just coasting. We're breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, big arm drives, get the knees up and cycle the legs, and just maintain good pace. Now in this zone on the back stretch, you just want to know where you're at. You're not looking around, but you want to have a great idea of where you're at in the race. Is lane 8 pulling away from me, or is lane 2 or 3 catching me at this point? You want to be right in the middle, or if you can, be up front. Okay, you don't want to fall back, because around the curve, that's where the magic happens. Now, as we're approaching the halfway mark, you want to be hitting a split that's about 2 seconds behind your PR in the 200. So you're not far off, you want to be right behind it. Let's say you run 21 seconds in the 200, you want to be at around 23 seconds, so you're not too far off of your your 200 meter max. Now when we get around to that 180 mark, that's another place where you want to do a mental check. All right, where am I at in the race? Is outside lanes too far ahead, or is inside lanes starting to catch me? Or am I in a great position? Now, when you get to that 180 mark, that's where we go from tempo run to gradually building back up that top speed around the curve. So here we're going from tempo, picking up speed, picking up speed, picking up speed around the curve. Your goal at this point at the 120 mark is to be number 1 getting off the curve. You don't want anyone in front of you now, but you're gradually picking up the speed, not just going into tempo to burst, okay? Now here's where a lot of people lose the race. The last 100 meters. This is where you have to stay disciplined as a 400 meter runner. You gotta control your breathing, you gotta drive your arms, and you also have to stay mentally locked in to that finish line, okay? Now this is where a little bit of conditioning plays a part, as well as understanding how physics work. The more you start to tighten up those arms and tighten up your face and start a fight, that's where you lose the race. You want to stay as relaxed as possible and allow your legs to open up your stride. If your muscles are tight, there's no elasticity in your muscles. So now you're just going to have short and choppy steps, and that 100 meter stretch is going to feel like the longest stretch in your life. So you want to be able to keep the arms open, big arm drive, breathe no matter what. If you jog this completely or ran this hard, you're going to get to that mark and be tired. So tired is going to be, and this is going to, there's no way you're not tired by this point. So what you want to do here is use that push factor. You're going to be in pain, but focus. Drive those arms and push through. You want to have as much efficiency in your running form as possible, okay? So what I mean by that, you don't want your arms swaying across your body, that's slowing you down. You don't want to barely be picking up your feet. You want to get the knees up, drive your arm, control your breathing, and focus on getting all the way through. Don't worry about anyone else, but that's how you execute it from lane 4. All right, so the next thing we want to do is focus on how to execute the race in lane 1. The main thing about lane 1 is I like lane 1 simply because you get to view everyone in front of you. That means you should at no point have someone passing you in the race. You should be passing everyone. So how I look at lane 1, your curves are gonna be your advantages, okay? So from lane 1, you wanna explode out as fast as possible coming around the curve. Same concept, you wanna catch lane 2, possibly lane 3 by the 80-meter mark. Same thing, you wanna go out at 90 to 95% so that you can catch lane 1 or 2 on the curve. Now, being that you're in lane 1, I would say you have a lot more work to do. So your tempo needs to be strong coming off the curve, and then once you're in the straightaway, you can relax. So, meaning, once you run at 95%, you want to get back into tempo, but if possible, you can try to catch lane 2 and lane 3 before you finish the curve. So, more importantly, you want to be able to come off this curve right here with 2 people that you've passed already. Now on the back stretch, here you're relaxing and you're driving just like you would be in lane 4, but by the time you get to the 200-meter mark, this is where everyone else should be in danger zone. You want to mentally check again where you're at in the race. Okay, have I caught lane 2? Have I caught lane 3? How tired am I at this point? Do I have the energy to go? And where am I located? Now this second curve, this is where I would suggest being in lane 1, you put a lot of effort in here because you're gonna have the shortest curve, the shortest advantage out of everyone else. So here you're gonna push, pick up tempo, and really push through that curve. You wanna get to about the 130 to 120 meter mark and have that lead into the race. Now, if you're able to execute leading the race by the 120, you have the rest of the curve to create even more of a separation. So by the time you get into the 100-meter mark, you should have so much of a gap that they're gonna have a lot of work to do to catch you. But the same thing applies into the straightaway. Now you just focus on controlling everything, staying relaxed, opening up that stride so that you can get to the finish line first. Always think about your form here. You want to drive the arms as fast as you can while staying relaxed. There's no fighting in the face, no tension in the arms, just straight up relaxed running. All right, and that's what we're gonna do in lane 1. Get into the lead by the 120 mark. If not, you want to make sure by the time you're in the straightaway, you're in close proximity to whoever is in first place, and then you just use that technique to finish through and pass them on the straightaway. And that's how you run it in lane 1. Being in lane 8, you already know that you do not have a visual on anyone else in the race. So you're basically the rabbit the entire way. So here's what you want to do in lane 8. The race strategy doesn't change as much from each lane. The main thing is your mental, how you think about going through the race. So with lane 8, of course, you want to do the same thing. You want to get out as fast as you can to the 50 all the way through the 80 meters. I would say for lane 8, I would say the 80 meters. Because if you start to tempo at the 50, that just gives everyone else an advantage to catch you by then. So I would say run all the way through that 80-meter mark for that lane 8, okay? Now we're gonna get into a tempo run, just like the other lanes. But for the lane 8, at the 150 mark, would be the 250 on the other side. Here you wanna take a mental check. Where am I at in the race? You're not looking to the left or looking to the right to see who's in front of you or who's approaching you at this point. You just want to use your awareness to see, is someone catching me yet or am I good? Continue the tempo all the way through to the 200, just like the other lanes. You want to see where you're at the 200-meter mark. If you're hitting only 2 seconds off your PR in the 200. But what you want to do, this curve, you've got to run it with everything you got. Because everyone else in the inside lanes are going to have more of an advantage to catch you. You're the rabbit, so you have to create the separation as soon as the curves start. In lane 4, you can pick up the tempo at the 180, but here we got to start right at the 200 meter mark because everyone else got a shorter curve here. So you have to dig through that curve all the way around. You must push all the way here. Now, if you've run the curve successfully in lane 8, that would mean that you've ran the entire curve without anyone catching you at that point. So you're the first one going into the straightaway. Now, the bulk of the work is going to happen right in this zone where everyone's running off that turn. So you got to make sure right here you're hitting it aggressively. Now by here, you're able to check again to see where you're at in the race. Am I safe or do I have some work to do? If someone has passed you on the curve, don't get out of control or losing your control of your race. Just make sure that in the straightaway, you stick to the game plan, okay? If they've passed you, chances are they might have burnt all their juices running on the back stretch and into the curve, and by the time they get into the straightaway, they have nothing left. So what you want to do is the same thing, arms, control your breathing, open up the stride, get the knees up, and finish strong. Like I said, no matter what lane you're in, that last 100 meters is tough for everyone. So the main thing you have to do is control your form, make sure you have great posture, breathe, and get to the finish line as great as you can. Well, that's the way you execute the 400 meters from lane 1, 4, and 8. How I would break it down is if you're in any lane other than 4 in terms of 2, 3, or 5, 2 and 3, you break it down the same way as if you're in lane 1. And if you're in 7 and 6, you break it down. And 5, you break it down as if you're in lane 4. All right, so that's how you break it down. If you have any questions, let us know. But thanks for tuning in and good luck on your next 400. Peace.